The first thing Alara Whitcomb understood was that the silence was deliberate. No shouting, no panic, no frantic search through the falling snow. Just the slow, careful quiet of a decision already made. She lay half-collapsed beside the frozen carriage wheel, her gloved fingers numb, her breath shallow. The silk of her pale blue traveling dress was ruined, soaked, torn, useless against the cold. Her ankle burned with every pulse of her heart. Above her, Edmund Hawthorne stood perfectly still. Not frantic, not angry, just finished. "We can't afford this, Alara," he said calmly, brushing snow from his sleeve. "You were never meant to see the letters." Her vision blurred. Not from tears, from pain. "The accounts," she whispered. "The dowries, the false debts. You've ruined families." Edmund sighed, like a man inconvenienced. "You were supposed to marry my brother," he reminded her. "Smile. Stay quiet. Be grateful." The wind howled through the trees. "And instead," he continued, voice lowering, "you chose righteousness." She tried to reach for him. Her hand slipped. He didn't move to help. The carriage driver looked away. "This road isn't traveled in winter," Edmund said, almost kindly. "By morning, they'll assume you ran, or fell, or froze." Alara felt the cold creeping higher now past pain, into something terrifyingly gentle. "You loved me," she said. He met her eyes at last. "I chose you," he corrected. "That was never love." Then, he turned away. The carriage lurched forward, and Alara Whitcomb, once an honored future bride, was left in the snow to disappear quietly. She didn't know how long passed before hoofbeats broke the silence. A single rider, fast, controlled. The horse skidded to a halt. A man dismounted, tall, broad-shouldered, wrapped in a black wool coat dusted with frost. His presence was immediate, commanding the kind that bent rooms without effort. He knelt beside her. "Don't move," he said, voice low and precise. "You'll make it worse." She tried to speak, failed. His jaw tightened. "Christ." He shrugged off his coat and wrapped it around her with careful hands. "Stay awake," he ordered. "What's your name?" "Alara," she breathed. "Please, don't let me disappear." Something dark flickered behind his eyes. "I won't." He lifted her as if she weighed nothing. As consciousness slipped, she heard him murmur not to her, but to himself, "This changes everything." Alara woke to warmth. Not the imagined kind, not the half-dreamed memory of fire and safety, but real heat, heavy and undeniable, pressing against her skin. For one terrifying moment, she thought she was dead. Then, pain arrived. Sharp, localized, relentless. Her ankles screamed as she tried to move. Her ribs protested with a dull, aching throb. Her throat burned, dry as ash. She inhaled and smelled wood smoke. Her eyes fluttered open. She was indoors, a narrow bed, clean linen, stone walls darkened by age, firelight flickering low in a hearth across the room. Snow tapped faintly against a shuttered window. Alive. The realization hit her harder than the pain. A chair scraped softly. "You're awake." The voice was male, calm, controlled, not gentle but careful. Alara turned her head slowly. The man from the forest stood near the fire. Sleeves rolled to his forearms, dark hair streaked with silver at the temples. He held a cup in one hand, watching her with an intensity that made her instinctively straighten, even injured, even weak. He wasn't handsome in the charming way Edmund had been. He was something sharper. "Don't try to sit," he said. "Your ankle's fractured. 2 ribs cracked. Mild concussion. You were an hour from freezing." An hour. Her breath caught. "You." Her voice was rough, barely sound. "You stopped." "Yes." "You didn't have to." "No." He met her eyes fully now. "I didn't." That unsettled her more than gratitude. He crossed the room and lifted her head just enough to press the cup to her lips. Warm broth. Salt. Life. She drank because he told her to. Because something in his presence made resistance feel pointless. When he lowered the cup, she whispered, "Why?" His mouth curved not into a smile, but something close to it. That, he said, is what I'm deciding. She frowned. Deciding what? Whether you're an inconvenience or an opportunity. The words should have frightened her. Instead, they steadied her. She swallowed. Who are you? A pause. Just long enough to matter. Alaric Vale, he said at last. Duke of Blackmir. Her pulse stumbled. Blackmir. Edmund had spat that name like a curse. You're his enemy, she said. Yes. She closed her eyes briefly. Of course he was. When she opened them again, he was watching her closely. You were abandoned, he said, voice neutral. Left in a manner that suggests intent. Who did it? She could lie. She should lie. But she was too tired for fear. Edmund Hawthorne, she said. My fiancé's brother. Ah. That single word held years of context. He proposed the match, Ilara continued quietly. Arranged it, controlled it. When I found proof that the Hawthorns were falsifying dowries and investment trusts, he decided I was inconvenient. Alaric studied the fire. The Hawthorns have been untouchable for decades, he said. They buy silence, ruin witnesses, marry strategically. Yes. You threatened to expose them. Yes. And instead of killing you outright, he finished, they chose disappearance. Elara's fingers clenched in the blanket. I wasn't supposed to survive. No. Alaric agreed. You weren't. Silence fell heavy, thoughtful. Then he asked the question that mattered. What proof do you have? Her heart sank. I saw letters, ledgers, names, dates, false accounts tied to marriages and estates. But they're not mine. I memorized what I could. Enough to reconstruct. Enough to start something, she said. Not enough to win. Alaric turned fully toward her now. That depends on who's standing beside you. She searched his face. You're not doing this out of kindness. No. Then why? He walked to the window, pulling the shutter open just enough to watch the snow-covered road. Because the Hawthorns destroyed my family's Southern alliance 8 years ago, he said. They arranged a scandal. A death ruled accidental. I've been waiting for leverage ever since. Her chest tightened. So I'm leverage. You're a catalyst. Is that better? Much. He turned back to her. You can recover here, he said. I'll see that you're safe until you can travel. And then you return to your life, he said. If you wish. She laughed softly, a broken sound. My life doesn't exist anymore. He didn't argue. Instead, he said, there is another option. Her stomach dropped. I don't like how that sounds. You won't, he agreed. But you'll understand it. He stepped closer, stopping just out of reach. You disappear officially, he said. No announcements, no mourning. Let the Hawthorns believe you're dead. Her breath caught. And while I'm dead, you become my wife. The world tilted. That's absurd. It's strategic. I don't love you. Good, he said flatly. Neither do I. She stared at him. You want me to marry you, she said slowly, so I can stand beside you while we destroy them. Yes. That makes me bait. No. Alaric corrected. It makes you untouchable. She shook her head. You can't expect me to agree to this. I expect you to survive, he said. This is how you do it. She thought of Edmund's calm face. The snow. The certainty of being erased. If I refuse, I'll fund your recovery. Arrange safe passage somewhere remote. And when they find me, they will, he said simply. Eventually. Her silence stretched. Alaric waited. Finally, she said, this isn't a marriage. No, he agreed. It's a weapon. She met his eyes. Then I have conditions. A flicker of interest. I thought you might. Justice, she said. Not just revenge. The families they ruined deserve restitution. Agreed. And if I become a liability to you truly, you let me go. He studied her for a long moment. Then, he nodded once. Agreed. She exhaled shakily. When would this happen? As soon as you can stand. She closed her eyes. She had been discarded once. This time, she would choose the danger that fought back. Very well, Ilara said. Alaric extended his hand. Welcome to Blackmir, Duchess. She took it and felt the future lock into place. Ilara married the Duke of Blackmir without witnesses who mattered. No crowds, no celebration, no questions asked. The chapel was old stone and shadow, tucked deep within Blackmir's eastern wing. Frost traced the tall windows like veins. 2 servants stood as witnesses, loyal, silent, uncurious. Alaric wore black. Not ceremonial black, wore black. Ilara wore ivory, borrowed and unadorned. Her ankle still bandaged beneath the hem. She leaned slightly on a cane, but she stood on her own. That mattered. The vicar spoke quickly, clearly aware that this was not a love match, and equally aware that asking questions of the Duke of Blackmir was unhealthy for one's future. Do you take? Yes, Alaric said before the sentence finished. Ilara swallowed. Yes, she said a breath later. Rings were exchanged. Cool gold, heavy, final. When the vicar pronounced them married, Alaric did not kiss her. He offered his arm. She took it. That was their first lesson. Blackmir Manor was not welcoming. It was strategic. Stone corridors built for defense. Narrow windows positioned for archers. Doors thick enough to survive sieges. Portraits of ancestors who looked like they'd ruled by endurance rather than charm. This house was never meant to be admired, Alaric said as they crossed the great hall. It was meant to outlast enemies. Ilara believed him. Staff lined the walls as they entered. No applause, no smiles, just assessment. At the front stood a woman with iron gray hair pulled back into a severe knot. Her posture alone could have cut glass. Mrs. Calder, Alaric said. My steward. Her eyes flicked to Ilara's ring. Her cane. Her spine. Your Grace, Mrs. Calder said, curtsying with exact precision. Welcome to Blackmir. Not welcome home. Not yet. You'll see to her needs, Alaric continued. Discretion above all. Of course. Mrs. Calder turned to Ilara. You'll find Blackmir. Demanding. Ilara met her gaze. So am I. Something like approval passed between them. The training began the next morning. There was no recovery period. No indulgence. You will be attacked socially before you're ever attacked openly, Alaric said over breakfast. We prepare for that first. Etiquette tutors, political briefings, ledgers, maps of alliances, names spoken until Ilara dreamed in titles. She learned where to sit, when to speak, how to imply without accusing. She learned silence as a weapon, and she learned how to stand beside a man who frightened rooms into obedience. Dinner was every night at 8, always together, always public within the manor, always controlled. They sat at opposite ends of a long table built for 20, the distance intentional. You flinch when questioned, Alaric observed one evening. I'm injured. Physically, he agreed. Not socially. I don't enjoy being examined. Society enjoys nothing more. She exhaled. You enjoy this. I endure it. Their gazes locked. You're angry, she said quietly. Yes. Not just at the Hawthorns. No. She waited. He did not elaborate. Another lesson. The invitations arrived 3 weeks later. Lady Morland's winter salon. Lord Keswick's anniversary ball. The Queen's cousin's private musicale. Mrs. Calder read them aloud with visible concern. They're testing her, she said. They always do, Alaric replied. Ilara's stomach tightened. I'm not ready. You're ready enough, he said. And readiness is irrelevant. Appearances are not. The first event was brutal. Lady Morland's salon glittered with silk and scrutiny. Every eye turned when Ilara entered on Alaric's arm. Whispers followed. Too young. Too sudden. No lineage worth naming. Ilara felt them like needles. She did not react. She smiled. She listened. She spoke carefully, When asked how she met the Duke, she said, "Unexpected circumstances." When asked about her family, she said, "Private ones." When asked about the Hawthorns, Alaric answered for her, "My wife has suffered enough curiosity for one lifetime." His tone ended the discussion. That night, in the carriage home, Ilara's hands shook. "You did well," he said. "I felt like prey. You looked like power." She laughed weakly. "I don't feel powerful." "You didn't feel dead either," he said quietly. That silenced her. Pressure escalated. Anonymous letters arrived. Veiled insults, disguised as concern. Questions meant to corner, to expose, to break. Ilara learned to counter with calm. She learned to let Alaric step in, and when not to need him. That part mattered most. One night, after a particularly vicious dinner, she found him alone in the library. "You built this life to be cold," she said. "Yes. And yet you brought me into it." "Yes." "Why?" He didn't look up from his papers. "Because you survived." She stepped closer. "So did many. Not like you." She hesitated. "I don't want to be a weapon forever." He met her eyes then. "Neither do I." Something unspoken shifted between them. Not romance. Not yet. Respect. The first rumor broke a week later. Whispers of financial discrepancies, of altered dowry accounts, of marriages built on theft. Ilara heard it at a tea she attended alone. She didn't smile. She didn't deny. She let silence do the work. That night, Alaric poured her wine himself. "They're beginning to bleed," he said. She took the glass. "And us?" He watched her over the rim. "We're becoming dangerous." She held his gaze. "Good." Society did not attack Ilara Whitcomb openly. That would have been vulgar. Instead, it sharpened its knives quietly and smiled while cutting. The first blow came disguised as concern. A letter arrived one morning, on thick cream paper, sealed in blue wax. "My dear Duchess, it pains me to raise this, but whispers have reached even my careful ears." Mrs. Calder did not finish reading it aloud. She set the letter down slowly, lips thinning. "They're circling," she said. Alaric, seated at the head of the breakfast table, did not look up from his correspondence. "Good," he replied. "Let them." Ilara felt the familiar tightening in her chest. Not fear, but recognition. This was how Edmund operated. Never first. Never obvious. Always patient. The second blow was social. Lady Morland's name vanished from invitation lists that included Ilara's, then Lady Keswick's, then 3 others in rapid succession. The message was clear. Attend her events, or attend ours. Choose. At the Queen's Cousin's musicale, Ilara entered a room that went unnaturally quiet. Conversation resumed, only after she passed. She sat. She smiled. She listened. And then, the woman beside her leaned in, voice low and sweet. "My dear," Lady Ashcombe murmured, "you must find it all so exhausting." Ilara turned her head slightly. "What?" "Pretending," the woman clarified. "No history, no connections. Thrown into power so suddenly. It must feel like standing on ice that could crack at any moment." Ilara took a measured sip of tea. "Only if one believes the ice was thin to begin with." Lady Ashcombe blinked. Across the room, Alaric's gaze lifted. He'd heard. Good. The third blow was personal. A sealed package arrived at Blackmir 3 days later. No return address. Inside was a ribbon, pale blue, frayed at the edges. The ribbon from Ilara's engagement dress. Her breath stalled. Alaric saw her hand freeze. "What is it?" he asked. She didn't answer. She couldn't. Because beneath the ribbon lay a folded note, written in Edmund's hand. "Some things should have stayed buried. You were always easier to control when you were afraid." The room felt suddenly smaller. Alaric stood. "Who sent it?" She swallowed. "Edmund." His jaw tightened. "So," he said quietly, "he's chosen escalation." The next attack came in public. Lord Harrow's winter ball was impossible to refuse without consequence. Half the court would attend. Absence would look like weakness. Ilara prepared carefully. Black silk. No jewels beyond her wedding ring. Hair severe. Posture unyielding. When she entered on Alaric's arm, the whispers began immediately. And then Edmund Hawthorne stepped directly into their path. He bowed. Perfectly. "My Duke," he said smoothly. "And, Duchess." Ilara did not look away. "You look well," Edmund continued, "considering everything." Alaric's voice was glacial. "Speak carefully." Edmund smiled. "Always. I simply wanted to express relief. We feared Ilara had vanished." "She did," Ilara said calmly. "From people who wished her harm." A ripple passed through the surrounding guests. Edmund's eyes flicked just briefly to the onlookers. "Well," he said lightly, "it's fortunate she found a protector." Alaric stepped closer. "She found a husband." Edmund laughed softly. "Protection, power, marriage, convenient solutions." Then he leaned in, voice low enough that only Ilara could hear. "You're still standing on ice," he murmured. "And I know exactly where it cracks." Ilara smiled. "That's where you're mistaken." The rumors detonated 2 days later. Anonymous pamphlets circulated in salons and clubs. The Duchess of Blackmir, a convenient bride, false virtue, false accusations. How a nobody manipulated a duke. They questioned her past, her character, her sanity. They accused her of fabricating financial misconduct to secure her position. Society aided eagerly. At breakfast, Mrs. Calder laid the pamphlet on the table like a corpse. "They're testing whether we'll flinch," she said. Alaric picked it up, skimmed once, then tore it in half. "Good," he said again. Alara's voice was steady. "He's trying to isolate me." "Yes." "He wants me to panic." "Yes." She met Alaric's eyes. "I won't." That was the moment he believed her. The final strike came at court. Ilara was summoned alone. No Alaric. No buffer. The Queen's cousin received her with a practiced smile and cold eyes. "There are concerns," the woman said. "Serious ones." "I've heard," Ilara replied. "Your accusations against the Hawthorns are dramatic. They're accurate. You have no proof." "Not yet." The woman leaned back. "Society does not wait for proof, Duchess. It waits for permission." Ilara inhaled slowly. "Then I suggest society prepare to be disappointed." The woman studied her. "You are either very brave," she said, "or very foolish." Ilara met her gaze without blinking. "I survived being erased," she said. "This is easier." That night, Edmund made his final move. A rider arrived at Blackmir after midnight. Urgent. Breathless. "Ilara," Alaric said, already rising. "Get your cloak." "What is it?" He handed her the note. "Your sister is missing. Perhaps accidents run in the family." The world went cold again. But this time, she wasn't alone. Alaric's hand closed around hers, firm, grounding. "This," he said, voice dark with promise, "was a mistake." For Edmund Hawthorne, they did not panic. That was the Hawthorns' first miscalculation. Ilara stood in the map room of Blackmir Manor, cloak still dusted with snow. Edmund's note clenched in her fist. The fire burned low, throwing shadows across inked borders and pinned routes. Alaric stood opposite her, already issuing orders in a voice so controlled it was lethal. "Lock the gates," he said. "No riders in or out without my seal. Wake Calder. I want messengers on 3 roads within the hour." Ilara's chest felt tight, but her hands were steady. "My sister wouldn't run," she said. "Not without word." Edmund took her. Alaric nodded once. "He wants you reckless. He won't get it." That earned her a sharp look. "Good," he said. "Then we do this properly." The trap did not snap shut all at once. It never did. It tightened slowly, like a noose pulled by patience and law. By dawn, Alaric had dispatched men not to search blindly, but to listen, to ask questions the way nobles did politely, indirectly, with coin and authority. Meanwhile, Elara sat with ledgers spread before her, reconstructing memory into ink. "Start with marriages," she said, voice low. Dowries laundered through estates. Edmund favored second sons and distant cousins, less scrutiny. Alaric wrote without looking up. "Give me 3 names." She did. Then 5 more. By noon, the pieces began to align. By dusk, the pattern was undeniable. Society sensed the shift before it understood it. Invitations arrived again, urgent now. Conciliatory. Lady Ashcombe sent flowers. Lord Harrow requested a private audience. The Queen's cousin sent a note, clipped and curious. Elara did not respond. Instead, Alaric announced a gathering. Public. Formal. Impossible to ignore. A financial symposium, framed as reform-safe, respectable, irresistible, to those with investments to protect. And at the bottom of the invitation, written in Alaric's own hand, "Attendance is advised for those with interests tied to Hawthorne Holdings." Edmund received his copy at dawn. He laughed. He should not have. They brought Elara's sister home the night before the gathering. She was frightened, unharmed, furious. "He wanted me to send letters," her sister whispered, clinging to Elara. "To say you'd lied, that you were unstable." Elara closed her eyes, pressing her forehead to her sister's hair. "I know." Alaric watched from the doorway, jaw rigid. "That was his last card," he said quietly. "And he played it too early." The hall was full. Not with allies. Never trust allies, but with witnesses. Bankers, widows, distant cousins with quiet fortunes and sharper memories. Clerks, who had once been dismissed for asking the wrong questions. Edmund arrived late, always dramatic. He wore confidence like armor, smiling as he crossed the room, bowing to Alaric with exaggerated courtesy. "My Duke," he said, "hosting lectures now? How civic." Elara stood beside Alaric, silent, still. Alaric did not rise. "Lord Hawthorne," he said calmly, "you're just in time." The doors closed. They began with numbers. Not accusations, not emotion, just figures laid bare. Accounts that doubled back on themselves. Estates that paid twice. Dowries that vanished, then reappeared as investments with impossible returns. Murmurs spread. Edmund's smile thinned. Then Elara stepped forward, not trembling, not angry, clear. "I was not discarded because I was inconvenient," she said. "I was discarded because I noticed." She met Edmund's eyes. "And because I remembered." She named dates, names, estates. Faces in the crowd went pale. One man stood, then another. A widow clutched her ledger with shaking hands. "That was my husband's money," she whispered. Edmund laughed again, too loud. "This is absurd," he snapped. "Hearsay. Memory." A woman scorned. Alaric stood. Slowly. "You kidnapped her sister," he said. The room froze. Edmund's breath caught just once. "She's here," Alaric continued. "Safe. And prepared to testify." That was the sound of a man realizing he was finished. The reckoning did not end that night. It began. Audits were ordered. Accounts frozen. Names whispered with disgust instead of deference. Edmund tried to leave. He didn't make it past the doors. As guards moved, he turned wild-eyed to Elara. "You think this makes you powerful," he hissed. "You were nothing without us." She stepped closer. "I was nothing to you," she said quietly. "That's not the same thing." He was taken away, shouting. She did not watch. Later, alone in the map room, the adrenaline finally faded. Elara sat, suddenly exhausted. Alaric poured wine, handed her a glass, then surprised her by kneeling in front of her chair. "You were flawless," he said. "I was terrified," she admitted. "Yes," he agreed. "And you did it anyway." Their eyes held. Something shifted. Not strategy. Not alliance. Something warmer. Riskier. "Part of me wanted him to suffer more," she said softly. Alaric's mouth curved faintly. "He will." She exhaled. "And after?" He stood, offering his hand. After, he said, we decide who we are without enemies. She took his hand. For the first time, the future felt open. The silence after war was always the strangest part. Elara felt it most in the mornings. No urgent letters. No whispered threats. No careful counting of allies and enemies before she spoke. Just light spilling through tall windows of Blackmir Manor, soft and unguarded. Edmund Hawthorne was gone. Not vanished, not rumored away. Gone in the way men like him hated, most exposed, documented, dismantled piece by piece. His accounts frozen, his name spoken cautiously, his influence reduced to a cautionary tale. Society moved on quickly. It always did. Elara did not. 3 weeks after the reckoning, she stood in the West Gallery, watching her sister laugh with Mrs. Calder over tea. The sound startled her, every time pure, unafraid, safe. Alaric appeared beside her without announcement. You're smiling, he observed. I'm still surprised she can, Elara replied. She will again, he said. Fully. Time helps. She nodded, then hesitated. And you? She asked. Will it help you? He did not answer immediately. They had not spoken about them since the night of exposure. Not directly. Strategy had fallen away, leaving something undefined in its place. Alaric was not a man who thrived in undefined spaces. I don't know how to exist without an enemy, he said finally. She turned to him. You're not required to fight anymore. His mouth curved, faint and wry. I'm aware. I just don't know who I am without it. Elara studied his face, the lines at the edges of his eyes, the tension he carried even at rest. Then we learn, she said. Together, or apart. But honestly, that earned her his full attention. Society tested them one last time, not with cruelty, but with curiosity. Invitations shifted tone. No longer probing, now admiring. How extraordinary. So composed, so capable. Elara attended fewer events. When she did, she spoke plainly. She did not soften her past. She did not dramatize it either. Power, she learned, came from refusing both. One afternoon, she found Alaric in the study, staring at a blank page. Planning something, she guessed. Trying to, he said. Blackmir has always been defensive. I'm considering change. Her brow lifted. That sounds dangerous. For me, he agreed. She smiled. The choice came quietly. No grand declaration. No forced moment. Just a night when Elara woke from a dream she couldn't quite remember and found Alaric sitting at the edge of the bed, fully dressed, staring into nothing. You were shaking, he said softly. I didn't wake you. She sat up, pulling the blanket around her shoulders. You stayed. Yes. Out of duty? He looked at her then. No. That word changed everything. She studied him in the dim light. Alaric, she said carefully. If this marriage remains what it began as, I can live with that. I'm not afraid of independence. I know, he said. That's what frightens me. She waited. I didn't plan to care, he continued. I planned to use circumstance, to win, to survive. And now, he said quietly, I find myself choosing you in moments where strategy has no voice. Her throat tightened. You don't owe me love, she said. Not after everything. I'm aware, he replied, which is why I need you to understand this isn't obligation. He reached for her hand, slow enough that she could pull away. She didn't. I want you, he said. Not because you're formidable. Not because you survived. Not because you're useful, he exhaled. But because when I imagine a future that doesn't include you, it feels empty. The words were not polished. They were not practiced. They were true. Elara felt something in her chest finally loosen. I was chosen once before, she said softly. It nearly killed me. I know, he said. That's why this time, I'm asking. She searched his face for calculation, found none. Then choose me, she said. Every day, even when it's inconvenient. A ghost of a smile touched his mouth. I already am. They did not rush. Love. Elara learned. did not need to prove itself through urgency. They learned each other slowly. Habits, silences, wounds that did not bleed but still ached. Alaric learned how to rest. Alara learned how to trust without surrendering herself. Blackmir changed with them. The West Wing was opened not for grandeur, but purpose. Women displaced by scandal or cruelty found refuge. Accounts were audited publicly. Marriages arranged under coercion were challenged. Society resisted, then adapted, then followed. One winter evening, months later, snow fell again over the same road where Alara had once been abandoned. She and Alaric stood at the window, watching it settle. "Do you ever think about it?" she asked. "The night you were left?" "Yes. Every day," he admitted. "And every day, I'm grateful I didn't ride past." She turned to him. "Together, you didn't save me because it was right," she said. "You saved me because you chose to stop. And you lived," he replied, "because you chose to fight." He took her hands. "No one will ever use you again," he said. "Not while I breathe." She smiled, soft, certain. "I don't need protection anymore," she said. "I know," he answered. "That's why I stand beside you, not in front." They kissed. Then, not desperate, not triumphant, chosen. Alara Whitcomb had been discarded once, but she was never used again. She was seen. She was respected. She was loved not as a weapon, not as a strategy, but as a woman who survived and chose herself. And that was the ending that mattered.
Hi guys, this channel is Saggy Stories and Tales. This moral of this story reminds us that being chosen through manipulation is not love. Real strength is found in choosing yourself, speaking the truth and refusing to let cruelty define your future. Thanks for watching. Bye bye.